This is the ROS Developers Podcast, episode 37.
The ROS Developers Podcast. The ROS Developers. The ROS Developers Podcast. The ROS Developers.
Hello, ROS Developers, and welcome to the ROS Developers Podcast, the podcast that gives you insights from the experts about how to program your robots with ROS. I am Ricardo Tellez from The Construct, and today I would like to dedicate the podcast to all those ROS developers that want to display a series of data, provided by a ROS topic. Because you need that in order to debug complex robot behavior. And you are struggling there deciding which topic, which data to show, and what is the meaning of all that plot. So I would like to dedicate the episode of today to all of you that you are at this moment with this problem, with that problem. And related to this topic, to that subject, today we are going to talk with Davide Faconti. And it's very cool because this is the second time that Davide is being on the podcast. The previous interview, Davide talked about his packages for creating behavior trees and how you can create behavior trees easily in ROS. So he released a series of packages that allow you to do the implementations in ROS. I will put a link beneath the podcast so you can review that interview. Actually, it's the second favorite podcast interview of the whole series of the ROS Developers Podcast. But today Davide is here for something different, okay? So Davide is a fervent developer of tools for robotics. And this time he's going to talk about another super useful tool that he has developed. It is called PlotJuggler. So let's learn today with Davide what is PlotJuggler and how can we use this also with best practices in order to get the most of ROS and how to debug with ROS. Welcome to the podcast, Davide.
Hello, Ricardo. How are you doing?
Fine, my friend. Second time here, okay? So the previous experience was not so painful then.
No, it was fine. Actually, I'm enjoying very much being with you today. And I'm very excited to talk about PlotJuggler because it's a project of mine that I've been developing in the last couple of years. Actually, it's a personal project. I've done it in my spare time. So, and now it's time, to make it more popular among ROS developers.
Yes, I hope, because it's directly competing against RQT.
Well, there's no competition anymore. We definitely won't.
Okay. Yes. Okay, but so let's explain to the listeners what is PlotJuggler.
Sure, of course. So PlotJuggler is, in short, is a simple application, a desktop application to visualize the time series. So basically, it's in my opinion, the ideal companion for tools that we use already in ROS. There is ROSBEG and Rviz. Mm-hmm. So together with them, we built this kind of, let's say, the trinity of debugging in ROS.
Okay.
So yeah, you can use it either with ROSBugs, so static logs, or visualize live streaming from ROS topics.
In live. So what is being produced at the real time?
Yes.
Okay, and so the question: why did you decide to create it?
Okay, this is a longish story, but it's very interesting. I hope you will enjoy it, and also the people at home.
Yes, we have time. Go ahead.
So basically, everyone in robotics knows that we cannot really use the classical debugging tools like GDB or stuff like that. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense to think that you can stop with a with I don't know, with your
With a debugger.
debugger, a control loop in a drone or a mobile robot, that makes absolutely no sense. So
Yes.
for robotic developers in general, it's a much better choice to use tracing and logging. So recording as much data as possible, and then visualize this data to try to understand what happened, why the robot behaved in a certain way, or the signals, the sensor, the internal states of your or your algorithms and your software. So there is a more reasonable thing to do. And I had a very, very interesting experience more than 3 years ago, because I participated to the DARPA Robotic Challenge. And we all know that was probably one of the most exciting things that happened to robotics in the last decade. I participated together with the HMC team in Pensacola, in US. And actually, our team got the second place. So we did very well.
Impressive.
And okay, brace yourself. They don't use ROS at all, or basically 90% of what they've done is done by themselves in Java. So they don't use C++. They don't use ROS. It's everything done by themselves. And it was surprisingly good. It was really awesome. So, and they had in particular something that I've never seen before. Not like that, at least. There is an awesome way to do extremely detailed logs and then visualize them. So they had both the logging part and the visualization part done by themselves. And that changed completely the way we worked, because usually when something goes wrong, you say, okay, let's launch again and see what happened. Let's put a printf in our code or stuff like that. Instead, whenever there was something weird, they said, okay, let's stop. Don't run the robot again. Let's observe the logs. And they used to log something like maybe 10,000 variables, a lot more than usually people do. And it could have been very hard to find what you're looking for in so much data, but it wasn't, because they had this exceptional tool, to find exactly what you're looking for and quickly visualize it. And so when I came back to Spain after this awesome experience, I said to myself, I have to build this. How can people live without it? I mean, this changed completely the way I look at debugging in robotics. And so I started this project. So this is the reason why I built PlotJuggler, because I believe there's a better way to understand the data, to visualize data quickly and with less mental overhead.
Yes, and I remember when you came back also that you especially were telling us to us that the people at PAL Robotics there, that you tell us, I'm amazed with this tool that they do have. They are recording everything, and then they can afterwards replay at every step and then reproduce what was the exact state of the robot at any moment. So you can figure out where the things go wrong. And then you can localize what is attributed to this. So a similar approach, if I remember, you were using a similar approach when you were working at PAL Robotics also, where you were debugging some real-time control for the motors of the RIM robot, wasn't it?
Of course, as I said, this makes even more sense in a real-time software where you cannot stop, interrupt the control loop, and so it's better to just record the data. And I used to have my own tools, very simple. But this what PlotJuggler became in the last couple of years is something I believe much superior, and I know that many people either in academia or even in companies are using it, and they're happy with that.
Yes, I'm going to put some videos also beneath the podcast so you can see the PlotJuggler in action, and it's amazing how you can quickly drag and drop different variables that you have in your ROS back, and then combine all of them in a single in a single screen, or compare them on different screens, but all of them can be seen at the same time. And you can move the time and see how each one of those variables is changing, and all of them at the same time. It's amazing. And now for in which version do you have? Because you have explained to us this tool that you saw while at the DARPA Robotics Challenge. It looks to me like you want to reach that goal version, that dream version that they had. And at present, so in your way to that dream version, what is the current status of PlotJuggler?
Well, right now, actually yesterday I released PlotJuggler 2.1, and if I and I am exactly where I am. Actually, I have some features that the original software didn't have, so I would say that mission accomplished in that sense. And so yeah. Version 2 was released less than 1 month ago, and it's I guess a lot more stability and more interesting feature, a better integration with Rviz. And that is very cool.
Okay, and for which version of ROS is prepared PlotJuggler? Can it work with any version, or is it specifically for one ROS version?
Well, okay, first of all, PlotJuggler was written not like a ROS software. So the PlotJuggler itself doesn't have any ROS dependency, but it has plugins. So old-fashioned plugins, C++, and some of these plugins support ROS. So ROS is not mandatory. I support right now any version of ROS 1, so from Indigo to Melodic. And I will need more work to make it available for ROS 2, basically because a big chunk of my work is about deserializing with my own library the messages at runtime with and so I need to get familiar with the new ROS 2 serialization protocol before I'm able to move to ROS 2.
Yeah, to get the data from the packages or the topics. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I don't understand why you mentioned that it's not dependent on ROS, but so in order to read the ROS bags information, you need to in some way to be compatible with ROS.
Yeah, that is done through plugins. So these plugins are optional. So PlotJuggler would still work without ROS, but there are some plugins that are the bridge to ROS.
Okay, and then so I don't understand. Then if you don't use for ROS, then for what else would PlotJuggler work?
You could use it for whatever data. I mean, imagine, do you want to use exactly the same functionality for CSV, comma separated value files, or maybe someone in YARP wants to use it, or SmartSoft, or any other, or if you have a proprietary serialization, logging format, you can use it. So you can use it it's meant to be used in a way that is platform independent.
I see. So then in case that you would like to use for CSV files format, or YARP, or I don't know, or OCOS format, then you will have to build a plugin. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, right now no one asked for that, but it's an option.
Okay. And then
I can give you a concrete example. Look, for example, a popular format for logs is the one from PX4. So it's a logging from quadcopters.
Yes.
So it could be possible to create a plugin to parse that file. So far, I don't have anyone interested, but it is possible, and that is not ROS.
And then you can use this for recording data. You can use PlotJuggler for example, if there is a topic that is producing some data, so you can use PlotJuggler for recording that.
Yeah. So since you can use it for streaming, so listening to the to the topics, you can also record them under the hood and then save them on a ROS bike. So there is a tiny, one of the many additional options that PlotJuggler has.
Okay, so in that case, you would connect to the topic and then provide the option that is listen to that topic and record whatever it is produced on that topic, is published on that topic.
Yeah. And actually, what I think that is even more interesting is what you mentioned is not just saving it on a file, but republish something that you read from ROSBAG. So it is like a ROSBAG play that any one of us knows very well, but it's much more powerful because you can go very easily back and forth in time, moving the slider with your mouse, and you can see instantly the message at that point of time are transmitted again, so you can see it together with the Rviz. You can see very easily you can see what happened at minute 5 or 6 of your ROSBAG. So it's the user experience is far superior than other tools in that sense.
Yes, I agree with that because I have tried also, and it's super cool. This slide, you can move and it's very smooth, the movement along the different points of the data, and you can see in the same time how the different topics that you are plotting, it is changing all of them at the same time, even if you move the slide from one of the topics. So you can see at every point in time what was that specific topic that you are interested in, but also the others, how the others are changing with that topic. And that is that visualization of all the data at the same time that can give you the hint about where is the problem.
Yeah, exactly. So imagine that you can see in your plot a spike in a sensor, and then maybe you want to watch at the same time the image from your camera. So oh look, right at that time we bumped into an obstacle or whatever. So you can really understand better. So Rviz give you the 3D vision, and PlotJuggler gives you the numbers about the values of your variables at that time.
Yeah, because you mentioned now that in PlotJuggler you can also visualize the images and display them. And now you mentioned another interesting thing is about the integration with Rviz. I have seen some videos that show the integration with Rviz that are spectacular. I'll put them down this podcast. But can you tell us how PlotJuggler integrates with Rviz?
Well, it's simple. You just republish the message. So that's easy.
Okay.
Something that was a little bit hard was actually oh snap! This was not supposed to happen during the. Sorry.
Yes, I apologize to all the audience.
Okay.
Davide is receiving the pizza. So yeah, the pizza is here. So
yes,
has arrived.
So as I said, basically something that was a little bit tricky was TF, because TF, as you know, it's stateful. So dealing with that was a little bit complicated, but I did it.
More complicated.
So, but apart from that, it's just a simple republishing.
Okay, and so on the images that I saw, you were showing, I think there is a Kinect sensor that is on the top of a robot, and there is a joint that rotates this Kinect sensor. So you can, with this slide, modify, so move the position of the joint, so you can see in real time in the Rviz, you can see how the different information that this Kinect sensor is capturing.
To be correct, you don't really move the joint, you go back and forth in time.
Okay, yeah, that is right. So the moving the joint is what you interpret. So what you are thinking that is happening, but it's actually right. You're just moving the back and forth on time. So previously that joint has moved on those directions.
Exactly.
Okay. And then there is a question that something that I saw on one of your videos is it says the user-defined transforms. What is that? Can you explain me what is this?
Okay, this is a new feature. Actually, I'm quite excited about it because it was the first feature sponsored by a company that is basically about creating data transforms. So you have a data. Let's keep it simple. Let's say that you have a value that is in radians and you want to visualize it in degrees. So you can apply a transform that and multiply it by a constant. So you generate a new time series from a previous one. This can be arbitrarily complex. For example, you can take a quaternion and convert it to roll PCO, or
that's
create
super cool.
so basically, or I don't know, a low pass filter, or make the average of two values. So
Wow.
whenever you want to, apply very simple formulas to your data, you can just write down the formula and create new data. And so I like to joke that now it's really a replacement of MATLAB. No, not really, but anyway.
Okay, but you already warned me because that's a pain that I'm suffering when you want to plot the position of a robot and then you are getting the position from the odometry and the orientation is in a quaternion. So you cannot see what is the actual orientation. And I have a lot of problems to explain this to the students because they don't understand what is this quaternion here. And if you can apply this transformation in real time, and show directly the orientation. That is
actually you can
great.
do it in real time. So even with streaming, so it works even with streaming data. So you can have a yaw formula that got read the quaternion and get the yaw.
Yeah. And would it be possible to display something in two variables like x and y? So would it be possible to display the position of the robot and the orientation?
Yeah. So even if most of the user experience is about time series, that means a value in the y and time in the x axis, horizontal axis. There's also the option to create phase plots. So basically, say okay, these two values share the same time. So give me the two-dimensional representation. So that is very useful for, as you said, for example. You get the x and the y of odometry, and so you get really a 2D representation of the trajectory.
Yeah, exactly. A trajectory of something, of a robot, or even a trajectory of a planar movement joint or something. Then you can get that trajectory itself.
Yeah.
Not the values of the joint. Yeah, that's great. I didn't know that. Just realized when you were explaining about the transforms. And tell us also about the plugins that you already mentioned. So if I have correctly understood, by default, the PlotJuggler comes with the plugins for accessing ROS topics and ROS bags. And is there any other plugin that is interesting, that could be interesting for the audience?
Yeah. So we have plugins either for reading data from file to read data from streaming, and a further kind that is where probably there will be more in the future. It's about republishing. So and this is completely platform independent. So I have an interesting one that is still ROS based, but that is about the ROS console. The messages with the info debug error level. So actually, I have a replacement of RQT console that goes back and forth in time. So you move the slider and you can see the messages appear and disappear.
And disappear, so going can, for example, back and forward. Wow.
Yes. So actually, let's say that. Oh, look! At this moment of time, I got an error. Let's keep a look to the value of these variables when the error occurred.
Wow, that's very cool. That is very cool because you got the message, the actual message that is telling you in this bunch of messages that we receive from all the different nodes. and it's crazy, but you can identify because you can stop, and then once you stop, you can go and replay, well, actually see the values of the topics that you are interested on that at that moment.
Yeah. So if we come back to the way we usually work, ROS Play give us this option, but time only goes incrementally. Instead, the PlotJuggler focus on easily go back and forth.
Okay, this is already available. Sorry, I didn't understood if it is already available or is something that you're working on.
It is.
It is. Okay,
no. It has been available for a long time. Yeah.
Okay, so I missed that one then. But that's very, very cool. And then, so those are all my questions for today. I hope that the people understood how useful could be this tool, the PlotJuggler, and that they start to use it and try and send you pull requests and especially send you donations because you are accepting donations, right?
Yeah, as I said, I'm doing this in my spare time, and it's a great satisfaction to know that people use it. But if I want this to become really a professional product, I'd like not just donation because that is heartwarming and I really appreciate them, but really get more companies involved, and so. Companies that use this and can imagine that it can be even better and more stable and more professional that they talk to me to see if they can sponsor the further development of the tool so that it is useful for them.
Okay, yeah. So well, I think that in our case, for example, that would be useful if instead of having a Qt interface, because at present your PlotJuggler is a Qt application that runs on Linux. Yeah. So instead of having that, maybe with a web interface that can be replaced with a web interface, that would be great. Maybe we can talk about this later.
We should talk about that. Well, now with WebAssembly, I think start becoming viable. Before it wasn't for me because it's 15,000 line of codes, so migrating it would be a lot of work. But now there is WebAssembly, and I believe it start being possible. So we should talk about that.
Okay. So then we'll have a coffee here in Barcelona and talk about that. And afterwards we'll do a live class showing it. Remember that we have that we already talked. We already talked some months ago about doing a live class showing. Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, but I mean, we put some exercises to the attendance to the live class, and they practice, and then we make them modify and this and that, and find the error. We can provide, for example, a ROS pack that has an error inside, and they have to use PlotJuggler to find it.
Cool.
Yes. Okay. So we'll talk about that, Davide.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ricardo. It was a pleasure to talk with you.
Yes, always. To talk with you also. Thank you very much, Davide. And for all the listeners, bye, Davide. For all the listeners, remember that if you want to learn ROS fast, there is no better place than the Robot Ignite Academy. At the Robot Ignite Academy, you will learn ROS online, practicing in an integrated web environment that contains the lessons, it contains simulations, and the code development tools. Everything is integrated inside a web browser, so no installation is required. It's the fastest method to learn ROS and other related subjects like ROS for autonomous cars, for ROS for industrial robots, or machine learning applied to robotics. Have a look at this at the robotignite.academy. That is all for today. Thank you very much for being here listening to the podcast, and see you the next week with a new lesson from the experts. And until then, keep pushing your ROS learning.
The ROS Developers Podcast. The ROS Developers. Podcast, the ROS Developers